The roar of the engine was a familiar comfort, a constant hum that accompanied my dad on his long hauls between Edinburgh and London. The miles melted away under the tires of his truck as he navigated the motorway, a routine he had grown accustomed to over the years. But one journey, in particular, etched itself into his memory, becoming a story he would recount time and time again. It was a grey, overcast day, the kind that cast a somber mood over the landscape. Dad was about halfway through his trip, somewhere between the quiet rolling hills of the Midlands. The road stretched out ahead, a ribbon of asphalt flanked by fields and occasional clusters of trees. He reached over to adjust the radio, searching for a station that wasn't drowned out by static. As he settled back into his seat, something caught his eye. To his right, a small car was keeping pace with his truck. He glanced over casually, expecting to see just another commuter. Instead, his eyes locked onto a woman's face, her hair pulled into a severe bun reminiscent of Miss Trunchbull from Matilda. Her expression was what jolted him, a mask of sheer terror, her wide eyes pleading for help. Dad's heart skipped a beat. He did a double take, but before he could fully process what he was seeing, the car sped up and veered off at the next exit. Confused and unsettled, he continued driving, trying to shake off the image of the woman's petrified face. Maybe it was nothing, a misunderstanding, or a trick of the light. The sky grew darker, heavy with the promise of rain. The motorway stretched on, an endless corridor that seemed to swallow time. About half an hour later, as Dad was beginning to regain his composure, another car drew level with his truck. His pulse quickened as he glanced to his right. There she was again, the same woman, the same hauntingly terrified expression. This time, she was in a different car with a different driver. A chill ran down Dad's spine. What were the chances? Two different cars, the same woman, both times looking directly at him with that same look of fear. His mind raced through possibilities: kidnapping, human trafficking, or some bizarre coincidence. He knew he had to act. He planned to pull into the next service station to report what he had seen. Better to be safe than sorry, he thought. But just as quickly as they had appeared, the car disappeared into the flow of traffic, vanishing before he could get a good look at the license plate or the driver. Frustration gnawed at him, but he knew there was little point in calling the police with so few details. So he pressed on, the unease gnawing at the edges of his mind. Hours passed, and the outskirts of London began to emerge in the distance. The city's glow, even through the thickening clouds, was a beacon signaling the end of his journey. But the closer he got, the more he couldn't shake the feeling of impending dread. He kept glancing in his mirrors, half expecting to see that woman again. And then, as if conjured by his thoughts, there she was. A third car pulled up alongside him. The same woman, the same bun, the same look of absolute terror. This time she was screaming, her mouth open in a silent cry for help. Dad's heart pounded in his chest. This was no coincidence. He swerved into the nearest lay-by, his hands shaking as he reached for his phone. The police needed to hear about this, even if it was a wild goose chase. He dialed 999 and explained the situation as best as he could, his voice trembling with urgency. To his surprise, the operator told him they had received 3 other calls about the same woman in the same area within the last few minutes. Dad stayed on the line, providing as much information as he could. He watched the car speed away into the distance, a silent prayer on his lips for the woman's safety. The police assured him they were dispatching units to investigate, but he never heard anything more about it. He scanned the news for days afterward, hoping for some closure, but there was nothing. The woman, the cars, and the terrifying encounters remained a mystery, a puzzle with pieces forever missing. The days turned into weeks, and the memory of that haunting journey remained vivid in my dad's mind. Every time he drove the route between Edinburgh and London, he found himself scanning the cars around him, half expecting to see the woman's terrified face again. The incident became a staple of his storytelling repertoire, a chilling tale shared over late-night dinners and family gatherings. Life on the road returned to its usual rhythm, but the questions lingered. Who was that woman? What was she trying to escape from? And why did she appear to him in particular 3 times on the same day? The lack of answers gnawed at him, a constant reminder of how little control he had over the vast, unpredictable world outside his truck's cab. One night, several months later, my dad was parked at a truck stop, nursing a cup of coffee and chatting with a fellow trucker. The conversation meandered through the usual topics: routes, weather, and the peculiarities of life on the road. Eventually, Dad shared his story about the woman with the Miss Trunchbull bun, half expecting the other trucker to dismiss it as a tall tale. Instead, the trucker's eyes widened with recognition. He leaned in closer, lowering his voice as if to ward off eavesdroppers. "I've heard about her," he said. "Well, not her exactly, but there's been talk among us about a woman fitting that description. Terrified, like she's running from something. Always in different cars, different drivers." Dad's heart raced. This was the first time he had come across someone who knew anything about the mysterious woman. "What do you know?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The trucker shrugged, glancing around nervously. "Not much, just stories, you know. Some say she's a ghost, trapped in a loop, reliving her last moments. Others think she's a victim of some organized crime ring, and the different cars are a way to move her without drawing too much attention. But no one knows for sure. She's like an urban legend among us truckers." The conversation left Dad with more questions than answers, but it also gave him a strange sense of camaraderie. He wasn't the only one who had seen her. There were others out there who had shared the same unsettling experience. It was a small comfort, but a comfort nonetheless. Over the years, the story of the woman with the Miss Trunchbull bun took on a life of its own. It became a cautionary tale for new truckers, a mystery that seasoned drivers would discuss in hushed tones. Every now and then, a new sighting would be reported, always following the same eerie pattern: different cars, same terrified expression. One evening, as Dad was preparing for another long haul, he received a call from an old friend, a retired police officer named Mark. They hadn't spoken in years, but Mark had heard about Dad's encounter through the trucking grapevine and decided to reach out. "I've been doing some digging," Mark said. "There's not much in the official records, but I came across something interesting. Around the time you had those sightings, there was a series of kidnappings and disappearances along that route. The cases were never solved, but there were reports of a woman fitting the description you gave, seen with different drivers. The police suspected human trafficking but could never gather enough evidence to make arrests." Dad listened intently, his grip tightening on the phone. "Do you think she was one of the victims?" "It's possible," Mark replied.